Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Pitchick and Adrian Gonzalez. How's it going, Adrian?
Pretty good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. Weather's finally breaking here, and stuff's going well at work.
Oh yeah, you got Hurricane Florence.
We're not supposed to get hit by the hurricane, I don't believe, but we are getting a lot of runoff rain, which I'm not going to complain about. But like, if any of our listeners are in the path of Florence, please get out. Please just
They'll hear this after the hurricane's already come, won't they?
Probably. Okay, in that case, listeners, if any of you were in the path of Florence, I hope you got out of there okay.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show.
Thanks for listening to the show. Let's take care of the upkeep. We got a big old episode here. So first off, we are brought to you every week in part by Original Magic Art. Original Magic Art is a wonderful online website with a variety of tokens, dice bags, playmats, and art prints from Magic's history and the history of art as a whole. And they're kind enough to, in part, sponsor the show through an affiliateship. And if you go to originalmagicart.store/commentary, spell as it is in the name of this podcast, or you use the affiliate code commentary in all capital letters as you're checking out, you should get a nice 10% off your order, and we get a little bit of a kickback. So not only are you helping keep the lights on here, getting yourself a little bit of a discount, it just works out for everyone. So
hey, treat yourself.
Yeah, treat yourself to something nice, and let them know that we sent you. So yeah, once again, either originalmagicart.store/commentary or use the code commentary in all caps during your checkout. What do you have for us today, Adrian?
Well, Mike, for just $1 an episode, you too can join our Patreon. You can listen to the full show, including the pre and post shows, as well as getting access to our lit patron-exclusive Discord channel.
And I will say we had about 15 minutes of pre-show this week of wildly varying quality.
Unspeakable things.
So, yeah, if you want to hear us just talk about things that are not strictly magic related and sometimes are just weird, go ahead. Or if you just want to support us.
Treat yourself.
So before we get into the topic for today, you brought to my attention that the deck we talked about last week did reasonably well in the challenge this weekend.
Yes, there were 3 top 8s with it, 2 of them by the decks that I know of, original developers, and then a third person. So congratulations, folks, for your placement. That deck is really sweet, and it was a pleasure to cover it last week.
Yeah, I'm glad that for once our predictions came true. So right now is day of recording. We're in the first week of official Guilds of Ravnica spoilers.
And they're spicy.
They're super spicy. We will be getting to that next week. We will be recording on Saturday so that we have the full spoiler in front of us. We can talk about every common in the set. And this week, Adrian came up with something that's a little bit adjacent to that we thought. I heard the idea. I thought it sounded fun, so I said, why not? And Adrian, what are we doing this week?
So this week, we're doing a review of sorts. We have gone through commons of Ravnica's past and picked out the ones that we thought were cool. You'll notice a lot of the ones we picked are also heavily played in the format, but we were looking for cards that caught our eye or we thought strongly represented their guild. So we're going to take you through Ravnica commons, specifically guild-affiliated ones. Part of our search was that we only got cards that were watermarked. So that excludes any cards that are not. And the other thing is we only picked cards from Ravnica. So you won't see Soul Manipulation or Agony Warp in this discussion. Because although those are blue-black cards, they are not Dimir watermarked cards. So they're not as on flavor as some of the cards I think we're going to review.
Yeah, and I have a certain affinity, I guess, for the plane of Ravnica, in part because it was in Standard when I came back to Magic, and also I just learned this recently. The city of Ravnica is actually based off of my ancestors' homeland. It's based off of Prague in the Czech Republic.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, just a neat little thing. I saw that from one of the people from R&D, and I guess in some way that makes sense to me now why I like it so much. But we're doing this in the Wooburg order that is used to order multicolor cards within set numbers. So the first on the plate is going to be the 5 allied guilds, then the 5 enemy guilds. And we're starting things off with Azorius. And my understanding is these are 50% of Law and Order, right? These are the lawyers. Is that correct?
Azorius are basically lawyers, yeah. So they are the ones who know the laws of the plane of Ravnica, and they are quick to enforce. I will tell you that. You ever heard of a little card called Supreme Verdict? Yeah, that's some Azorius law.
Yeah, and so blue-white, traditionally sort of a more controlling color pair. Sometimes dabbles into tempo, sometimes dabbles into flyers, but for as far as mechanics, they've had detain and what was their original mechanic? Forecast. God. So we don't have either of those mechanics here, but we did pick out 3 neat cards. And first on the block is recent downshift to pauper Court Hussar, which is 2 and a blue for a 1/3 with vigilance. And when it comes into play, look at the top 3 cards of your library. One of them goes to your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And when it comes into play, sacrifice it unless white was spent to cast it. And this is part of a cycle, am I correct?
Yeah, but I don't think I know any of the other ones off the top of my head.
I know Crypt Ripper because it's part of a combo. It does something where it like reanimates a creature power 2 or less or something like that. It's some weird ETB combo, but
let's talk about the ability though. So it's got vigilance. The law's got to be vigilant. And then when it comes into the battlefield, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, then you put them into your hand and then put the rest on the bottom. So it's like it's detaining one of those cards for questioning.
I think we may be bad at this whole Forthos thing, Adrian.
No, I'm good. That's the card. That's what it's doing.
So this card is actually pretty sweet. It's never really found a home in Pauper. It's only been in the format for a while, but this type of ETB effect is fairly powerful because this is a slightly modified version of the card Impulse that happens to come with a 1/3 vigilant body. So I hope that this someday finds a place because it is a very sweet card, but it just the fact that you can't flicker this, I think, is what kills it. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, because it just dies.
All right. What's our next card on the chopping block?
It's another lawyer. It's the Deputy of Acquittals, which is got to be like one of the most boring names in the history of Magic, along with Remand. Do you guys know what Remand means?
No, I don't.
It means to like throw back into court. It's like, which is it's really funny. So anyway, Deputy of Acquittals is a white and a blue for a 2/2 with flash. Oh my god, I didn't even read its flavor text. Its flavor text is everyone deserves a day in court.
Jeez, really leaning in heavy on this lawyer thing.
When Deputy of Acquittals enters the battlefield, you may return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. So you send it back to jail or court. It's waiting for its court date.
So the obvious application of this would be to bounce something with some sort of ETB trigger, or to save a creature from a piece of removal or combat or what have you. And I believe that we've actually covered this in a deck tech, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so.
I think this was in that escape route deck.
Yeah, it's a sweet card, the sweet ability.
These types of bounce selling to your hand effects are almost always like fringe playable in Pauper, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this crop up somewhere else, but the fact that it is only a creature kind of limits how interesting it can get.
And then every time you cast it, you have to say objection.
Yes, full Phoenix Wright style.
Because what's the next card?
The next one is Overrule, and
Overruled.
I deeply like this because it's a janky counterspell. It's X white blue for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. So it is a spell blast, I believe. Or it's kind of like power sync. There's a bunch of these effects.
Or syncopate.
Or syncopate, yeah. It's closer to syncopate. But in here, instead of exiling it, you gain X life. And I've seen this played in an Azorius Tron list way back. And if you can pump a bunch of mana into X, this can just be this can just put you pretty quickly out of reach, in addition to countering a spell your opponent's playing. And ties nicely into our lawyer theme.
Yeah, because what's that flavor text say, Mike?
With one commanding word, the spell was put down and a fine collected for its casting. Geez, we really, honestly, I cannot emphasize this enough. We just picked cards that we thought were neat, and we managed to come through with a flavorful concoction of Azorius cards.
Yeah, so it's like the life is the money. It's funny.
So
I like it.
So do you think this has any other home in Pauper besides, offbeat Tron lists?
No, because it's an X spell, and then you gain X life. I think it really is going to be at home in a big mana type deck. Its biggest problem is that Tron is not typically a white deck.
Yeah. Although we've been seeing more of that now with the resurgence in Rhystic Tron.
That's true. And I would argue that Condescend is better because it's easier to cast, and you get to scry.
That's completely fair. All right, so that's one janky counterspell. Moving into Dimir, best known as, infiltrators and rogues and
Super Secret Spy Club, please, Mike.
I've actually been informed by Twitter recently that they are no longer fully a secret on the plane of Ravnica, but why don't you tell us about this next very janky counterspell?
Well, first we got to talk a little bit about the Dimir.
Mm-hmm.
The Dimir. They're super secret spies, and all their cards have to do with them poisoning or killing or stealing or generally being roguish, hoodwinking people. He teleports behind you. It's nothing personnel kid type people. They're the real nerds of this plane.
All right, there you go. There's our in-depth analysis.
They're the kid who runs like Naruto.
All right, so
let's talk about the card Perplex.
And this features the original Dimir mechanic, right?
Yes, Transmute. Perplex is 1, a blue and a black. Instant counter target spell unless hits controller discards his or her hand. Yeah, that's real confusing. And then Transmute, 1 blue black. Transmute is kind of weird. So basically, you pay the transmute cost, you discard the card, you search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as that card, and then you put it into your hand and shuffle your library, of course. But you can only do it as a sorcery. So in Pauper, it's traditionally used for tutoring up combo pieces.
Yeah, and this one's kind of in an awkward place because it's not the type of card you generally want to play in a combo deck, and it's also, on top of that, it's a Punisher mechanic, where if your opponent really needs to resolve the spell, they will just pitch their hand if that still allows them to win, or they're just going to allow the thing to get countered. And I don't know. It's kind of a funky one. The Transmute definitely ups its value, but it's still kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah.
Next on the list, we have a bunch of Ghost Boys. We have
this is also surprisingly, this is not an Orzhov card. Based on the art.
Yeah, it's got a very Orzhov-y kind of aesthetic to it. This is Drift of Phantasms. It's 2 and a blue for an 0/5 defender with flying, and it also has Transmute. In this case, it's for 1 blue. And this has seen play in days past in the Freed from the Real combo because it tutors up all the pieces.
And I think you'll find that true of the other Transmute cards we'll cover, is that they typically are not played in the same deck, but they each have a different home in a different combo deck, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I didn't actually know that Drift of Phantasms had flying. Like, this is so frequently just turned into another card that I had completely forgotten what the text on this thing was. But
relevant against Delver.
Yeah, relevant against Delver. Like, an 0/5 blocks for days against most flying threats. But yeah, this mainly is seen play as a combo card. But let's move on to the next one because this one's a little bit more high impact.
Next one we got Dinrova Horror. 4 blue and a black gets you a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, return target permanent to its owner's hand. That player discards a card. Flavor text. Welcome to Dimir Public Office. Not responsible for death or loss of property. Basement off limits. Sign outside Dinrova building. So in the picture, it's like an octopus, and it's like gonna attack someone. So it comes down, it attacks. You get thrown out of the building, and then you lose some of your sanity. You have to discard a card.
Yeah, and this was a downshift in Modern Masters 3, and boy howdy is this card a beating.
Good. It's a good card.
Yeah, like so obviously this gets played a lot with flicker strategies, and this was one of the more surprising downshifts out of that set. Obviously, a lot of the fanfare was taken up by a card that we'll get to later in this list. But Dinrobo Horror has still found a home in Pauper, and on top of that is just a very... It's an effect that feels pretty unfair to have at the common level in some situations, but I'm really glad that we got it. It's a fun effect to play around with, and I do love me a recoil, and I sure love it a lot more when it comes with a 4/4 body attached to it. Next up, we're back to more transmute. We've got Muddle the Mixture, which is blue for an instant, counter target or instant or sorcery, and transmutes for 1 blue. And this thing is, again, a combo piece.
In Turbo Fog.
Yeah, I've mostly seen it in Turbo Fog because it will tutor up Jace's Erasure. I know it's also found homes in various brews in Modern for Thopter Sword, now that that's legal again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it tutors up just enough things to be useful, and its backup mode of counter an instant or sorcery is actually fairly relevant. It's not straight up counterspell, but it does a pretty decent impression when you're a combo deck. And speaking of combo decks, this next one, how about you take this, because this is another combo piece that I have never actually honestly seen cast.
Next up, we got Dizzy Spell. Transmutes for 1. Well, it is a 1-drop. It transmutes for 3. The reason this card is good is because it goes and gets Tireless Tribe.
Yep, that's pretty much it. It's got no real application because the actual text of it that we didn't even read is target creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn. And that doesn't actually matter. I've never seen this thing honestly hard cast, but I'm sure that there's an application for it.
What's next, Mike? Let's get to some good cards.
Consult the Necrosages, and you actually had picked this one out. It's 1 blue and a black for a sorcery. Choose one. Target player draws 2 cards, or target player discards 2 cards. So 50% divination, 50% mind rot.
So the reason I like it, I don't think it's that playable, but I think it really captures the flavor of Dimir. Dimir rank and file never see nor hear their guildmaster. All orders are given through mysterious Necrosages who appear from the shadow, tersely tossed out a command, and then melt into the darkness. So it's like they're giving you the orders and you don't know what they're going to tell you.
Yeah, and I mean, this card, again, hasn't really seen play, but from a flavoral point of view, like, it's also got very evocative art. It's mostly very dark, and, you know, it's got these austere, weird Necrosages.
And it's by Paolo Parente, who has done some of my favorite art. Boros Guildmage is one of my favorite arts by Parente. I think it's he just has some incredible artwork.
Yeah, and very kind of old school magic. Like,
yeah,
I don't think Parente's done work for WotC in a while, and that's probably given probably at least in part due to the shift towards a less comic-y style.
Yeah, his style is very comic booky, and you can really see that in Boros Guildmage, which I just think is some of the best magic art.
Yeah. All right. So what's next?
Up next, we have Shred Memory, another transmute card. 1 in the black gets you remove up to 4 target cards in a single graveyard from the game. Not what it's used for. It's used to transmute in red-black Reanimator or X-black Reanimator for Exhume.
Yeah, although again, it does have a niche relevant main mode to it. Like, if you're playing against a graveyard synergy deck, you might just cast this.
It is an instant, so it is conceivable.
Yeah, it's not the most out there thing. Now, this next one, though, this is a little bit out there, and this is me putting a personal call out to former guest of the show, Any New Province. I need to see this in a deck at some point. It's Death Cult Rogue, so it's 1 and then a hybrid blue-black, hybrid blue-black. It's a 2/2, and it can't be blocked except by rogues. And
tribal rogues, Jeff.
Yeah. So the main reason that I actually think this is neat is there was a mechanic way back in, I want to say it was Shadow or Lorwyn, right? Maybe.
I don't know what the mechanic is, Mike.
The mechanic is Prowl, which was like this cares about tribe. And it was like, each of these cards had a tribe associated with it, and if you had dealt damage with a creature of that tribe, you could cast it for its prowl cost, and it would do special things. Notably, one of them is Latchkey Fairy, which is a 3/1 flyer that if you dealt damage with a rogue, you get it for 3 mana instead of 4, and you also draw a card when it ETBs. So
Tribal Rogue.
Yeah, and I do really like the art on this one as well. It's very kind of evocative of secret dealings. But yeah, Jeff,
And
get
is
on
his
it.
face a skull?
I think it is.
And the flavor text is, the hussars can't catch him, and he evades our traps with ease. I fear he walks unseen even in the halls of New Prov, Arrestor Lavinia, 10th Precinct.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of their whole thing. They're spooky shadow people.
Yeah. So up next, we get into my favorite guild, which is the Cult of Rakdos. My favorite band is Gwar, and actually Gwar was featured in the original Wizards article about Rakdos.
Was it really?
Which is kind of cool. Yeah. It was. They mentioned Gwar specifically as being the embodiment of this guild. So this guild is basically like hedonistic chaos. Like they're a guild of like thrill killers and service workers, which is really funny to me. But they're like an evil circusy kind of vibe. They worship a big demon. They like to have a good time. They have their own anthem. It's called the Anthem of Rakdos. I imagine it sounds like an Iron Maiden concert or something. But yeah, it's a great guild. It's my favorite guild. So
I don't know, all those circus archetypes. It feels almost like some sort of dark carnival.
yeah, I'm into that vibe too, to be quite honest with you.
All right, so what's our first Rakdos card we have here?
The first one is a song that Miley Cyrus named a song after. It's called Wrecking Ball. It's 2 a black and a red. Destroy target creature or land. That's why the song goes, destroy target creature or land. Yeah, just wreck me. So that song is based after this card. And it says, Rakdos festivals almost leave enough rubble in their wake to hide the bodies. And it's a picture of all these goblins just going berserk, like at a party. And then this dude's coming in and it's like, my house.
Yeah, just doing goblin things. And this is, it's a modal removal spell. So while 4 mana is not exactly where you want to be, it could at some point potentially find a home within the format.
Right. It's also, it is an instant. Okay. Well, 4 mana is just really a lot.
Yeah. Even for instant speed land destruction. Next up though, we've got another Rakdos instant, and this is Augur Spree, which is 1 a black and a red for an instant target creature. It's +4/-4 until end of turn. And here's the thing, this is actually most of the time just a removal spell.
Yeah. This card, I think almost single-handedly was the reason Rakdos was the best guild in Triple Ravnica. Like it's just so good. It was like one of the best. That, it and Stab Wound were just like 2 of the best removal spells in the set.
-4 toughness is just enough to put pretty much anything into the dirt. And in the off chance that you have something with 5 toughness of your own, this thing can just be a huge blowout combat trick.
And what is the flavor text say, Mike?
Finally, a weapon the Boros can't confiscate. Proprietor of the jury review. So I guess
the jury all male review.
I don't know, and like I guess this is like a mechanical thing. I don't know. The art depicts a bunch of drills just kind of eviscerating something.
Like a Rakdos looking guy, but is he an augur? What is the Augur Spree?
So an augur is a drill bit. So I believe that
okay.
the augurs are these weird drill things.
Going on a spree.
It's a very kind of Hellraiser aesthetic that's going on here.
Yeah, it's a great looking card.
All right.
After that, we enter into the wild Gruul. So the Gruul are basically savages. They live on the outskirts of society. They're all ogres and trolls and barbarian. They're like Conan the Barbarian, basically. And the first spell we have is Rubblebelt Maca, or Rubblebelt Maca, perhaps. 3 and a red gets you a 3/3, but that's not why we play this card. We play this card because it has Blood Rush. Blood Rush is the Gruul's mechanic from Return to Ravnica sets, and it says Blood Rush R, discard Rebel Belt Maka. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. And then the flavor text says the Maka remain loyal to us in this time of strife. We don't even have to feed them. Our enemies do. Nedja, Gruul Shaman.
Is this a cat with like 3 pairs of eyes?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So Blood Rush is a neat mechanic because it makes it so that while these creatures are mostly a little bit overcosted, it does let you kind of cash them in as combat tricks when you're on the aggressive. And as the Gruul deck, you generally want to be on the aggressive side of things, but it's neat to have kind of this modal spell that's either a creature or a combat trick. And we haven't learned what the Gruul mechanic is going to be for this third Ravnica block, but I'm interested to see if Blood Rush or Bloodthirst make a return. I could definitely see either one of those coming back. Next up, so here we go. I think that this is part of kind of that weird cycle we were talking about before. Tin Street Hooligan is a 1 in a red for a where did it go? There it is. For a 2/1, and when it comes into play, if green was spent to cast it, destroy target artifact. So it can be a disenchant or a shatter on a body.
And it was good in its standard set. It was played in standard and constructed in a Gruul aggro deck called Heezy Street.
Huh. I can definitely see that because this is still a pretty reasonable thing. If you can hit that red green, I mean, obviously a piker is not the most attractive of bodies, but the fact that it can be a artifact destruction spell on a body, I don't hate that. Like,
and roll that flavor text, Mike.
Roll the flavor text for you. Oh
yeah.
God, it's got words that aren't English. Rauk chows like a holiday, only it isn't on the calendars, and instead of dancing you knock people flat, and instead of giving gifts you break stuff. A very goblin-y flavor text, if you ask me.
So the other thing that you got to know about the Gruul is they live in this, well, they don't live, they're headquartered in a place called Skarg the Rage Pits, where basically they fight all the live long day. It's like Valhalla, but for not just Vikings. So our next card is Skargan Pit Skulk, played in Stompy. G gets you a 1/1, but it has Bloodthirst 1, which means that if an opponent was dealt damage that turn, it comes to play with a 1/1 counter on it. And creatures with power less than Skargan Pit Skulk's power can't block it. So I really like the flavor on that one. It's a really good card, but also, he's like lurking around. He's like looking for easy kills. He's skulking. And then when he starts to get his Bloodthirst on, it only makes him stronger.
And I've got to admit, this thing, I didn't realize until we were kind of walking through these how incredibly pushed this thing is for its era. Like,
yeah, it's like the mechanic and insane.
Yeah, it is almost always in the decks that play it a 2/2 for 1 mana, and on top of that, it has this weird form of evasion where it kind of can't be chump blocked, and that is actually pretty darn powerful. So it hadn't really struck me, just because I'm so used to seeing this as a staple of Stompy, how incredibly pushed as a card this was, especially for the time when it was released. So it's kind of neat to see it in comparison to some of its contemporaries.
And the reason Bloodthirst didn't return was because of,
I don't know.
Zertod Druid.
Is Zertod? Oh, sure. Yeah, this card would synergize very well with that. So Zertod Druid is a red and a green for a 1/1. Taps to add green to your mana pool, and whenever you tap it for mana, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So
it's actually a pretty sweet card.
Yeah, and I could definitely see how this would be a nightmare, because this just enables Bloodthirst for free. So,
and it ramps. I actually drafted a lot of Ravnica. That was back in my the peak of my drafting days. Every single Gruul deck I played had at least one of these in there.
Well, I mean, it just kind of chips in for damage while ramping you. So I could. Is there some way that this can become the win con for Freed from the Real?
Oh yeah, it does tap for mana. Huh, interesting.
It does tap for mana, and if you can generate infinite mana, that's the catch though. It doesn't make blue. If it made any color,
Yeah.
then we'd be having a real discussion about this. But yeah,
And
this is a neat little mana dork because you don't always see them with extra lines of text on them.
up next, we got to return to the rage pits. We got pit fight. Target instant, one in a red hybrid red green. Target creature you control fights another target creature. All the coins in Ravnica can't save his soul now, says Narbolg Nine Fingers, as he presumably, oh he is, he's about to kill an Orzhov guy.
Yeah, and I'm glad that this mentions coins because as everyone knows, the key to any sort of pit related activity is, of course, picking up change. But this is
No, he's saying the coins are bad now.
I'm trying to make a bad joke about mosh pits. Please just
Oh,
let me have this.
all right. Sorry,
but
as you were.
but in all seriousness, this is a card that has seen play in the sideboards of Stompy for a while because given that it's a hybrid card, you can just play this in mono green. There's no impetus to play this in a red green deck. And for a long time, this was one of the better options available in terms of cheap ways for a mono green deck to interact with other creatures. We've since seen a mono green version of this, which I believe is named Pounce. But
Uh, Even better, there's now the cartouche of strength.
there's Cartouche of Strength. There's also the pump fight effects. So this has kind of gone down a little bit in value, but it's still just a very, very hyper
Oh,
efficient way for you to interact with creatures in mono green or mono red.
there's also the cons one, epic confrontation.
Epic Confrontation. Savage Punch is the one from Cons. Epic Confrontation is the one from Dragons, and I think
Oh, okay.
both of those at different times have seen play within Stompy.
And what's our next card?
Our next one's a piece of the deck that we love to just scratch our heads at. It's Wild Cantor, which is a hybrid red green for a 1/1, and you can sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is a 1-land spy card. Outside of that, I don't think I've ever seen this played anywhere. Does this factor into some weird legacy combo deck that I'm forgetting about?
Maybe. I don't really know. I feel like in Legacy you can just play Gorilla or Elvish Spirit.
I want to say that like
I want to say Oops All Spells play this for some reason. I'm not sure.
yeah, like something like Uppsala Spells or like maybe Spanish Inquisition.
I don't know.
It's so the main thing about this is if you can pay a mana, this kind of lets you bank mana for a later turn. And outside of that, it's a pretty niche card in the great scheme of things.
It's like Lotus Petal. If Lotus Petal cost mana and was a creature.
Also, I was correct. It is part of Spanish Inquisition, which if you're at all interested in Legacy, I would recommend checking out Spanish Inquisition and then never playing it. It's one of those weird combo decks that makes very little sense outside of the context of Legacy.
Up next, we've got Scab Clan Mauler. Red and green gets you a 1/1 with Bloodthirst 2 and Trample. They inflict pain to forget their own and break foes to feel whole.
So you're telling me I can have a 2 mana 3/3 with Trample?
That's what I'm telling you, Mike.
Hoo boy. So again, if mana was not a if mana colors were not a concern, this would be a absolute all-star. But as it stands, the only thing really holding this back is the fact that it's a little on the difficult side to cast. If this was green, for example, I cannot imagine Stompy not playing this, right?
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and as it stands, not really in the cards, despite the fact that the next card on our list, and our last Gruul card, enables it pretty well, and that's a Burning Tree Emissary, the thing that stole a lot of thunder from Dinrova Horror. So Burning Tree Emissary is a hybrid red green for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, add red and green to your mana pool. And this is this was your favorite. This was the card that entitled what did we call that episode way back? Ravnica, the sexiest plane of the multiverse.
Oh yeah, that was a good episode.
It was.
There were a lot of runner-ups.
There were, but this has
Ravnica
become,
is, by the way, that title so true.
this has become like a fixture of Stompy decks and red deck wins because it fits seamlessly into either one, and this is a lot of the time just a free 2/2 body. And when you're trying to be aggressive, you'll take what you can, right? Even though it doesn't have any upside after the turn it hits the battlefield. It is, if you can make it
just
free.
Pressure.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I would say those who regard the Gruul as savage simpletons underestimate the subtle power of their shamans.
And I don't think our format did. As it turns out, though, this did not end Pauper as I was worried it would. So that's great. And you know what else is great? The Selesnya. I don't remember what their whole shtick is. Are they just hippies?
So they're basically hippies, and they want everything to go back to nature, but not like the Gruul. They want to live in like the unity. They're like a hive mind. They move with the swarm, and the swarm moves with them, and they're green-white for some reason.
Are you sure you're not thinking about the Golgari with the swarm bit?
I mean, no, you're right. I think the Golgari are actually, in fact, called the Golgari Swarm. I think the Selesnya are called the Selesnya Conclave.
Yeah, it's a bunch of idealistic hippies.
Yeah.
Let's not beat around the bush. And what's the first thing that we have for them?
Gather Courage. Convoke from their original Ravnica debut. It's... wow, excuse me. Gather Courage costs G. Convoke says each creature you tap while playing the spell will reduce its mana cost by one mana of that creature's color. And it has target creature gets +2/+2 till end of turn. This is a very archaic Stompy card from back before mutagenic growth.
Yeah, and at the time it did represent a kind of free way to pump a creature, so free spells are always good, right? It doesn't matter how bad they get. It's just a fact that they can be pretty minimal and still be neat. And Convoke is actually returning in Guilds of Ravnica, so I'm excited to see what else they do with it. It's a real neat mechanic.
Up next, the show's mascot.
Yep. We couldn't talk about Ravnica cards without addressing Call of the Conclave. It's green and white for a sorcery. Put a 3/3 green centaur creature token onto the battlefield, and it's just very efficient. And it's kind of become a meme among our fans because Adrian said it was pretty.
Therese Nielsen's a great artist. Centaurs are sent to evangelize in Gruul territories where words of war speak louder than prayers of peace.
So it's a murder lady, is what I'm hearing.
It's a horse murder lady.
All right, but before we get into regrettable territory, what's next on our list?
Up next, we got the Orzhov. The Orzhov are a bunch of spooky death worshippers who want to be ghosts when they die and have a lot of money.
Yeah, and they're loosely modeled off after, I believe, the Catholic Church during the period of indulgences.
I was gonna say the Mafia, but a little column A, a little column B, whatever.
I don't know why you're arguing. I said the Catholic Church during the time of indulgences, it was basically the Mafia. It was a criminal organization operating out of Italy. Don't worry about it.
All right. Hey, forget about it.
Forget about it. So what's the first Orzhov card we have?
First up, we got Tithe Drinker, who's a spooky vampire lady who sits on a spooky throne made of bones. She costs white and a black. She's a 2/1. She has lifelink, and she has the Return to Ravnica ability of Extort. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay hybrid white-black. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain that much life.
Yeah, and this is... I've seen this as a sideboard card. It does help
really
you stabilize.
Slow.
It is a little slow, but I do like Extort. Extort definitely gets better in formats like
Two-Headed
Commander.
Giant.
Oh, Two-Headed Giant definitely, but Commander is definitely where I've seen it the most. Just kind of, games are slower. Also, the cards are generally more impactful than a 2-mana 2/1 lifelinker. But
right.
Sometimes you gotta play slightly suspect cards to make sure that you get all your sideboard slots. Next up, we have Gift of Orzhova, which I think is the prettiest foil card as decided by the Magic populace as a whole. For those who have never seen this card before, go look up the art. It's by Johannes Voss, and it is gorgeous. It's someone with stained glass wings, like an angel. But Gift of Orzhova is one hybrid white-black, enchant creature. Enchanted creature is +1/+1, flying and lifelink. So I think this has been played a couple times in the Night Sky Mimic combo deck, but
Also in mono white by friend of the show Alex Ullman.
Yeah, I think that this card is just good. Like, even if you're not getting like weird, insane synergies from cross block interactions, this is just a pretty solid aura. It makes the creature evasive. It gives it lifelink, so helps you stabilize you, and on top of that, it looks real pretty. So
remember by whose gift you ascend.
Yeah, I mean that is a very evocative flavor text of the, loan sharks of Ravnica. So, how about you take this next one here?
Up next, we got Castigate, white and a black. Sorcery. Target creature reveals his or her hand. Choose a non-land card from it. Remove that card from the game. We have no need for military might. We wield two of the sharpest swords ever forged. Faith in our left hand, wealth in our right. And it's got this giant toad guy beating up this little guy, and the little guy is scared of what the toad guy's holding, and it appears to be a frowny face.
The art on this one's a little weird, isn't it?
I've also seen these weird toad guys all over the Orzhov stuff. That must be a thrall, right?
That is a thrall. They look weird on this plane because they're not just an amalgam of body parts like they are on other planes. I think like a thrall in this context is kind of like a homunculus.
Yeah, but it's holding this weird frowny face, and the guy's really scared of it.
Yeah, and this is, if you can cast it, a great hand hate spell. Just because,
it's the best in the format.
Yeah, just, no conditions outside of non-land, and it exiles on top of that. That's just, what more could you ask for?
It's pretty good.
Also, notably, Vuliev, the Ghost Council member quoted in here, is not been made into a card yet. Since they made one of them into a card.
No, there's two. There's Ghost Council of Obzadot and Ghost Council of Orzhova.
I'm referencing Karlov, the one who has his solo card, who is, I believe, Tesa's uncle. I don't know,
but he's the only one, right? There's like 5 of them.
Yeah, I think there's 5. That sounds about right. All right, moving on. The Izzet are a bunch of steampunk scientists. And a
collection of real weirdos with wackadoo contraptions and even more wackadoo ideas.
And I think for once, like, we have managed to not dreadfully mischaracterize the guild. I think like steampunk scientists is about perfectly accurate. And the first,
my read on all these guilds has been perfect, Mike. But keep going.
First on the chopping block is a card that sees a ton of play in our format. Nivix Cyclops. It's 1 blue and a red for 1/3 with Defender. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Nivix Cyclops gets +3/+0 until end of turn and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Spells matter has been a perennial theme for blue-red decks, so it makes sense that would carry over into Ravnica.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't really know what to say with these cards when they're just good cards.
After that, we've got Izzet Chronarch. 3 blue and a red. When it comes into play, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Not as good as we've discussed previously as some of the other cards that do this, just because it also costs red. But he ensures that not only weather, but also when and where the lightning strikes twice. So he's a great scientist.
Yeah. That's the other thing that is a recurring theme in their art is lightning. And they've really gone all in on this most recent set. If you're keeping up with previews, lots of lightning, lots of electricity. Real big fans of shocking stuff.
What's next?
Next up, we have Gigadrowse, which has been a combo assister for quite some time. So Gigadrowse is a blue mana for an instant with Replicate, which was the first mechanic that was made accessible to the Izzet Guild. And Replicate allows you to pay its Replicate cost and copy it for each time you do so. So in this case,
it's like Fixed Storm.
Yeah, it's manual Storm. You have to pay for each copy. But so in this case, you're tapping target permanent and you can replicate it for a blue. So if I pay 6 blue into this, I can tap 6 permanents, and that's pretty neat. Notably, it does not say non-land. I think that's the only thing saving this from the consignment bin of bad Magic cards.
Right. Up next, we've got Wee Dragonauts, which is like Nivix Cyclops, but not as good. It is 1 in a blue and a red for a 1/3 of flying. Whenever you play an instant or sorcery spell, Wee Dragonauts gets +2/+0 until end of turn. The Blaze Kite is a simple concept, really. Just a vehicular application of drag scoop tonics and electropropulsion magnetronics.
You may have bit off more than you could chew with that. Also, I don't think most of those are words.
But it's got a lot of lightning in it and some wee Dragonauts.
And this, prior to the release of Dragon's Maze, was part of the Kiln Fiend decks because it again has this like mega prowess ability, and this kind of got phased out because flying. I don't know.
It pumps for less, which maybe is relevant.
I was gonna say it pumps for less, but it's got built-in evasion. I don't know. I think the combo of both getting Nivix Cyclops and on top of that getting Temur Battle Rage. Yeah. Battle Rage just it's such an efficient way to give your stuff evasion that it really makes the difference between the +2/+0 and +3/+0.
What's next, Mike?
Next up, fan favorite and perennial token remover, Electrickery. It's a red for an instant. Electrickery deals 1 damage to target creature that you don't control. Now that's a weird way to phrase that, and it's because it has Overload, which is 1 in a red. You may cast the spell for its Overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So
Electrickery is such a great spell in our format.
God, is it ever. It is one of the barriers that you have to pass. Every time you think about playing an X1, you have to think, how willing am I to be blown out by Electrickery when this inevitably gets cast against me? This is just format staple, all around good card, and yeah. What's next?
Frostburn, weird. Blue hybrid blue red for a 1/4, and it's got a flowstone ability. Hybrid blue red, Frostburn weird gets +1/-1 till end of turn. Many chemisters are oblivious to the innumerable machinations of their guild, instead focusing obsessively on creating the perfect weird.
And I've seen this in mono blue Delver sideboards back in the day.
Yep, a while back.
Yeah, it's just been outpaced by more interesting things. It definitely can present a real clock, being able to pump all the way up to a 4/1, but the deck doesn't really want to be tapping down its own mana on its own turn a lot of the time. So I don't know. I can see why it's fallen out of favor. Next, and I pick this for my vote for like the most is it of cards that we have in our format. Goblin Electromancer. It's a blue and a red for a 2/2. So already it's a bear, and instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And very on point flavor text of, when asked how much power is required, is it mages always answer more. And this mainly sees play in modern, right?
Yeah, I don't think you really play it in Legacy Storm, but yeah, modern alongside Baral, Chief of Compliance.
Yeah, and this has never really found a proper home within our format. There was a list floating around ages ago called Goblin Storm that didn't actually play any Storm cards. It just played a bunch of Goblin token producers, and this helped make them cheaper. But flavorful, yes. Is it winning a bunch of leagues? Not really. It's just okay. What do you got next?
Up next, we got Dynacharge. R, instant. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Overload. 2 in a red. That thing evens the odds like a little lightning. Not playable in our format, but very is it related because it's lightning related.
Yeah, and I mean, if nothing else, this is a strictly better version of Trumpet Blast.
Right.
By nature of it can be cast targeting one thing for cheaper. Let's move on to the next guild, and one of my personal favorites. This is the Golgari Swarm, and the Golgari Swarm are actually another clan full of hippies. But in this case,
Zambies.
Yeah, they live in the sewers, and there's all sorts of assorted oozes and zombies and lizards and gorgons and all sorts of, perhaps less hygienic denizens of Ravnica. They do live in the sewers after all. And
All sorts of bong water residents.
yes, exactly. So starting things off, we've got Shambling Shell, which is a black and a green for a 3/1. You can sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And it also has the first guild mechanic that Golgari got. It's got Dredge. So it's got Dredge 3. If you draw a card, instead you may put exactly 3 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, draw a card. Adrian, is this the most broken mechanic that Wizards put in one of these sets?
Yeah, I guess because actual Storm is not.
Yeah. Despite having a lot of cards that support Storm decks in various formats, I've got to imagine, Dredge has been banned out of formats multiple times.
Dredge is pretty broken.
Yeah, and it just lets you turn your graveyard into another hand.
Up next, we got more Dredgers. Golgari Brownscale, a Tordex favorite. 1 GG gets you a 2/3, but we're not doing that. When Golgari Brownscale is put into your hand from your graveyard, you gain 2 life, and it is Dredge 2. So you can pair this with Tortured Existence to keep gaining 2 life and keep having a Dredger in your graveyard.
Yeah, and I have actually cast this in Tortured Existence. Sometimes a 2/3 will get there, but yeah, it's mainly this weird synergy of this ability that was meant to be minor, but wound up interacting with an old card that they had probably not taken into consideration when they printed it. And that is truly the heart of Pauper as a format, is weird interactions from different blocks. And funny you bring up Tordex, because the next one, Stinkweed Imp, also generally features pretty heavily in that deck. It's 2 and a black for a 1/2 with flying. Whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature, and it has Dredge 5. So this just lets you slop big old chunks of your deck into your graveyard. And this is the one Dredger from our format that sees extensive play in other ones, right?
Yes, because it's played in all formats.
Yeah, anywhere that there's a Dredge deck, this, I believe, outside of Grave Troll, is the highest Dredge number.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and the fact that it also chumps pretty well is not anything to sneeze at. All right, what's next?
Up next, we got Golgari Rotworm. 3 a black and a green gets you a 5/4. Zombie Worm. Sacrifice a creature. Target player loses 1 life. Like corpse worms, through a carapace, Rotworms slide through the hollowed bones of the Undercity.
And this is kind of a neat Aristocrats card. If it didn't cost mana, it would be a lot better, though.
Yes.
But
what's up next?
All right,
Oh,
what's up next? I'm glad you asked. It's the weirdest Rancor that you've probably never cast. It's Moldervine Cloak. So it's 2 and a green for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and it has Dredge 2. So it's not quite Rancor, but it does an okay impression, especially if you want to get stuff into your bin really quickly. Not much else to say about this one, unless you got anything.
Nah. Up next, we've got a reprint, which we didn't realize was a reprint. Elves of Deep Shadow. G gets you a 1/1 elf druid. Tap, add black to your mana pool. Elves of Deep Shadow deals 1 damage to you. Cast out of the Conclave generations ago, these elves found a home in the corrupted districts of the Golgari.
Did you know that there's actually a color shifted version of this?
No, which one?
I forget the name of it. I don't want to say Blight Soil Druid, but it was in Origins. There's just like a color shifted version of this. It's a black elf that produces green and pings you. This is more of a cube card, though, right? I don't think we've ever seen this break through into Pauper.
It's from it was Blight Soil Druid also costs 2 mana.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
my mistake.
It's from Lorwyn. No, it was close enough.
All right, well, moving on. This is another one of your favorite guilds, the Boros, and they're the other half of the Law and Order duo. They are the cops.
Yeah. Woo! So the Boros are the cops. Both of them, the cards with feature are human knights. And they're basically, they wear armor and they like to pretend they're in charge, and I don't know, they're a bunch of, they're like the worst part of Lord of the Rings, where they all gather around and they talk about how they got a noble quest and they got to defeat the darkness, and you just roll your eyes.
All right, fair. That's a large portion of Lord of the Rings. Not a fan?
No, I do. I was just trying to be relatable.
All right, starting things off, we got Daring Skyjack, which is 1 and white for a 3/1. A fairly common body these days. We've seen a lot of vanilla versions of this, but this one showcases the Return to Ravnica ability that the Boros had. Battalion. Whenever Daring Skyjack and at least 2 other creatures attack, it gains flying until end of turn. Not exactly a powerhouse within our format, but pretty solid and limited in terms of being able to get in, especially because that body is so incredibly fragile. Why don't you tell us about the other one, though, which I think is a little bit better on the whole.
Up next, we've got Sky Knight Legionnaire. 1 a red and a white. Gets you a flyer and haste. That's a 2/2. Millennium Platform. Once a monument to peace, was quickly seized by the Sky Knights for a strategic aerial location. That's not very nice of them.
No, but you know, that's their thing. Also weird that we've got the reprint of this, and the reprint of it doesn't actually show much sky, just kind of a night. But this is a pretty solid limited card again, and we kind of talked in the pre-show. One of the issues with Boros is a lot of their stuff is really good and limited, but it never really, at least for Pauper, has the punch to kind of get into a constructed deck. Like, both of these are very reasonable commons in a limited format, but these were kind of the best that we'd found. And it doesn't help that the other Boros mechanic, Radiance, is real weird. Do you actually remember what that one does?
It affects it and all the other colors, things that permits share color with it.
Yeah, it would be like the one that I've seen occasionally in Pauper's Leave No Trace, which is an enchantment removal spell that also blows up all enchantments of the same color.
We could have featured that card.
We could have. I don't know if it has the guild mark on it, though.
Okay, you're right.
It must have, though, right? Because it's
I didn't see it, so I don't think so. Maybe not.
Hmm.
Last on our list, we've got the blue-green guild, the Simic. They're like they're like the bio-mad scientists because they're all obsessed with like evolution and plants and weird animals, and Coiling Oracle is our best example. It's GU for a 1/1. It's a snake elf druid, which is awesome. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it into play. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. Snaking remnants of nature, directed by a body of thought and progress. The oracles embody all that is Simic.
Yeah, and that's always kind of been their thing is progress through sometimes terrifying genetic manipulation. And they've always kind of been the +1/+1 counters guild in Ravnica, and I'm very interested to see what they go with for their mechanic in the upcoming sets. We won't know for another couple of months, but I'm definitely excited for it. It's like we were talking about this, like where our sort of color identities when it comes to Magic lie, and I'm a big fan of everything in the Sultai or bug colors. So I'm definitely excited to see where they take this guild within the next set.
Definitely.
So yeah, this was our fun little look back through some of the guild cards of days gone by, and I can pretty firmly say I'm excited to see more of Ravnica. It's always been that set. It's always been like a fun set in terms of they're allowed to push gold to common pretty easily because of the multicolored nature. And yeah, I'm generally excited to see what comes up for the format.
Yeah, and we'll have that set review out soon.
Yep, next week.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by the support of our patrons, including 5311. Please consider supporting us, like them if you like the show. Check those video or the description of this podcast where you'll tell us on where to find us. We'd like to remind you, if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, you can contact us either via our website or you can email us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to my LGS, Pat's Games, and Mike's LGS, JP Comics, and of course, L. He does our theme song Quantitative. You can find that and other great tracks over at his SoundCloud, which is soundcloud.net/ELLELLELL. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.